Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we dig into a whole stack of articles, research, expert analyses, basically everything we can get our hands on.
Yep, and we boil it all down.
Exactly. We find those crucial nuggets of knowledge, those surprising facts, so you don't have to wade through, all the noise out there.
Our goal is always straightforward, to give you that shortcut to being genuinely well-informed.
And today, we are diving headfirst into a situation that's, frankly, gripped the world. We're looking at this period of intense, really concerning escalation in the Israel-Iran conflict. And it's all unfolded so dramatically over just the last 10 days.
Yeah, what's truly fascinating and worrying is just how fast the whole nature of this long-simmering rivalry seems to have fundamentally shifted,
Right.
So for this deep dive, we've really meticulously gone through a wide range of sources. We're talking frontline reporting from major news agencies, AP, Reuters.
The big ones.
The big ones, yeah. Plus, in-depth coverage from places like Al Jazeera and detailed analysis from really esteemed publications, The Times in the UK, the Financial Times, the NY Post.
A real mix.
A real mix. And our mission, as always, is to guide you through these pretty complex events. We want to help you understand the profound stakes involved here.
What it all means.
What it all means, and really discern what truly matters in this situation, which is, let's be honest, evolving incredibly quickly.
Yeah.
And throughout, we'll maintain, a balanced, impartial presentation of the facts as they've been reported in the material we've reviewed.
Absolutely crucial. This is obviously a topic with immense gravity, but understanding the core dynamics clearly is just essential right now.
Couldn't agree more.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Let's start right on the battlefront.
Yeah.
Because what we've seen over these 10 days, it's a level of direct military engagement that's, well, it's unlike anything we've really witnessed before between Israel and Iran directly.
That's the key word, directly.
So on one side, Israel launched what the sources are describing as an intense wave of airstrikes. And these went deep into Iranian territory.
Yeah.
This wasn't just, targeting proxies or hitting disputed border areas. We're talking significant, unprecedented penetration right into the Iranian mainland.
And that's a critical point for you to grasp. The sheer scale and that depth you mentioned of these Israeli strikes, it marks a really profound shift.
How so?
Well, our sources specify that these attacks targeted critical military and nuclear sites, and these were in locations previously considered maybe less vulnerable to this kind of direct, overt attack.
But not just border skirmishes.
Not at all. We're talking about targets deep inside Iran. Places like Isfahan, that's a key center for nuclear research, defense industries. Natanz, which, as you know, houses Iran's main uranium enrichment facility.
Right, the really sensitive stuff.
Exactly. And even hitting the suburbs to Tehran. That signals a willingness to strike right at the very heart of the Iranian capital's strategic infrastructure. And what's particularly alarming, based on the reported impact, is the killing of, and I'm quoting here, several senior members of Iran's elite military unit, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, and nuclear scientists closely tied to Iran's nuclear program.
Okay, so the IRGC, just for context, this isn't the regular army, right?
No, absolutely not. The IRGC, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, they're a major force in Iran militarily, politically, even economically. They're distinct from the regular army and often described as like the backbone of the regime. Very powerful, very influential.
So targeting them and nuclear scientists, that's hitting where it really hurts.
Precisely.
So when we hear that phrase, deep into Iranian territory, it signifies, well, a lot more than just Israel's military reach, doesn't it? It suggests a fundamental shift in their strategic intent.
That's right.
This isn't just about, say, weakening Iran's influence in Lebanon or Syria anymore. It feels like a willingness to directly confront Iran's core capabilities, its leadership, right there on its own soil.
Moving beyond the proxies.
Yeah, moving way beyond those previous proxy fights or, the covert operations we used to hear about, and targeting senior IRGC figures and nuclear scientists specifically. I mean, that's a direct blow to the strategic heart of Iran's national security and its most sensitive programs.
It's not just breaking things, it's taking out key people.
Right. It's not just about destroying a facility. It's about disrupting leadership, removing technical expertise, potentially setting back these critical programs by years. This just fundamentally elevates the whole nature of the conflict. It's way beyond those shadow wars we'd kind of grown accustomed to.
Indeed. And if you connect this to the bigger picture, it really signals the definitive end, I think, of that shadow war era between Israel and Iran.
It feels like it.
For years, right, their conflict was largely fought indirectly through proxies, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Yemen, or it was a combination of, covert actions, intelligence ops, cyber attacks.
Under the radar, mostly.
Mostly. But direct airstrikes deep inside Iran, specifically targeting these high-value military and scientific personnel, that indicates a clear, overt challenge to Iranian sovereignty and its strategic assets.
So what does that imply about Israel's thinking?
Well, it implies that Israel perceives a direct threat, maybe even an imminent one, that it believes necessitates this really unprecedented level of direct intervention.
Okay.
It moves the conflict squarely into a much more overt, you could say, conventional military confrontation. And that raises the stakes exponentially, not just for Israel and Iran, but frankly, for the entire Middle East and potentially beyond. It means the gloves are truly off.
And Iran's response, it was equally direct, maybe even more so in terms of scale, just unprecedented. Sources confirm Iran hit back, launching hundreds of missiles and drones.
Hundreds.
Directly towards Israel's core cities. I mean, this wasn't just a symbolic shot across the bow or a limited strike on a military base. This was a broad, sustained barrage aimed right at population centers.
Absolutely. And the specific cities mentioned in the reports, Tel Aviv, Haifa, Jerusalem, Beersheba, these are central hubs, population, economic centers, political centers within Israel.
Yeah.
This wasn't some kind of precision strike against a specific military target. It was a wide volumetric attack, clearly aimed at demonstrating capability, but also inflicting a broader psychological impact and potentially, of course, physical damage on Israeli society.
And we saw those images.
Oh.
The descriptions of Israel's Iron Dome air defense system lit up the skies. It really paints a picture of the sheer intensity of that night.
It does. And for our listeners, maybe just a quick refresher on Iron Dome. It's Israel's sophisticated mobile air defense system designed primarily to intercept, short-range rockets, artillery shells.
The kind they face from Gaza or Lebanon, often.
Exactly. It works by detecting incoming projectiles, calculating their trajectory really fast, and then launching interceptor missiles to, neutralize them in the air. Its strength is its rapid response, its precision targeting.
There's a but here, isn't there?
There is. The crucial detail reported by sources is that while Iron Dome intercepted many of these projectiles, it did not all of these deadly projectiles.
Many, but not all.
That phrase feels absolutely critical. What does that tell us? I mean, about the sheer scale of the threat Iran posed, and maybe the very real limits of even advanced defense systems like Iron Dome, which, let's face it, is widely seen as one of the best in the world.
Yeah, it is.
Because for all its tech prowess, if not all are intercepted, well, that means some got through, and those few could have absolutely devastating consequences.
That's precisely the central takeaway here. Look, Iron Dome is incredibly effective, especially against smaller, maybe less sophisticated projectiles, or when facing individual or small-scale attacks.
Right.
But when you're faced with hundreds of missiles and drones launched pretty much simultaneously, what military folks often call a saturation attack, even the most advanced system can just be overwhelmed by sheer volume.
Too much, too fast. Exactly. So this performance suggests that while Israel's defenses are definitely robust, they are not entirely impenetrable, especially not against such a concentrated and potentially varied barrage involving different types of threats.
So this direct, large-scale retaliation by Iran, how different is this from what we've seen historically?
Oh, it's fundamentally different. In the past, Iran's direct responses, if they happened at all, were far more limited, often targeting specific military assets or, more commonly, relying heavily on their proxies to deliver the blow.
Right, using Hezbollah or others.
Precisely. This latest barrage signals a clear and, frankly, highly significant willingness to directly engage Israel with its own arsenal, and aiming at population centers. That's a major escalation.
Yeah.
What truly stands out here, I think, is the sheer volume of the Iranian response and the formidable challenge it posed even to a world-class defense system. It shows a substantial step up in both their willingness and, apparently, their capability to project power directly at the Israeli heartland.
And that willingness to target populated areas.
Yeah.
It brings us to a deeply concerning, actually truly shocking aspect of this conflict. The civilian toll. This isn't just about military objectives anymore, is it? It's about the devastating human cost. Can you walk us through the specifics of that strike on the Soroka Medical Center? That happened on June 19th, right?
Yes, June 19th. And this incident, it was indeed a critical turning point. It amplified global concerns to a really alarming degree.
What happened exactly?
Sources confirm that Iran launched a Sejil medium-range ballistic missile, and it directly struck the Soroka Medical Center in Beersheba.
A sigil missile. What is that?
So the sigil is a significant part of Iran's missile arsenal. It's known for its solid propellant engine, which means it can be deployed faster, and it has a longer range than many of their older liquid-fueled missiles. It's a serious weapon.
And it hit Soroka Medical Center. That's a major hospital, isn't it?
It's a major regional hospital, a civilian medical facility, explicitly protected under international humanitarian law. There's no ambiguity there.
And the impact.
The immediate fallout was devastating. The attack caused extensive damage to the hospital structure itself, but maybe more alarmingly, it reportedly released hazardous chemicals.
Chemicals inside a hospital.
Yes, which necessitated immediate evacuation protocols, complicated rescue efforts. It was chaotic. And tragically, this led to over 50 people injured. And that includes patients, people already vulnerable, and the dedicated medical staff who were there caring for them.
Wow. Just wow. A hospital. A clearly civilian target, filled with patients, medical staff, struck directly by an advanced missile, leading to chemical releases, dozens injured.
Yeah.
The sources explicitly call this a shocking event. They say it raised serious concerns worldwide about Iran's willingness to target civilian infrastructure.
Understandably so.
This isn't just, collateral damage from a nearby military strike hitting something else. This feels like direct, intentional targeting of a hospital. What kind of message does a strike like that even send? And how does it dangerously broaden the conflict's scope? What's the strategic thinking, or maybe just the why behind such an attack, especially given the profound ethical and legal storm it creates?
Well, this incident immediately brings up critical questions about the fundamental rules of engagement in modern warfare. Specifically, the Geneva Conventions, which are absolutely unequivocal in protecting medical facilities, medical personnel during conflict.
Right, that's basic.
It's supposed to be. So when a nation intentionally targets a hospital, it sends a clear and frankly chilling message. It's willing to flagrantly disregard international humanitarian law. It's willing to escalate its tactics to include direct attacks on civilian life, on essential services.
But why? What's the goal?
The why behind such a devastating and, let's be clear, internationally condemned strike. It could be multifaceted. It might be an attempt to inflict maximum psychological terror on the civilian population, aiming to break morale, instill widespread fear.
Why?
It could also be intended to overwhelm the enemy's emergency and medical services, divert critical resources during a crisis. Or perhaps in a more cynical light, it could be a deliberate demonstration of just callous disregard for civilian life, intended to signal that, basically, no site is off limits, we can hit anything.
A terrifying message.
Absolutely. Regardless of the precise motivation, by targeting a hospital, Iran signals it's willing to dangerously broaden the conflict's scope, moving from military objectives to the very fabric of civilian society. And that's an escalation that invites severe international condemnation. It could potentially draw in more external...
And beyond this specific, horrifying incident at Soroka, let's talk about the overall human cost reported over these 10 days. What are the casualty figures looking like on both sides, according to the sources, and what do they really reveal about the nature of this conflict?
Yeah, the figures reported are stark. They underscore the brutal reality on the ground, and they do reveal distinct patterns, both in terms of vulnerability and the types of attacks.
Okay.
In Iran, the sources we reviewed indicate over 650 military and civilian deaths, with at least 1,300 injured. And that's attributed directly to the intense Israeli air raids.
Over 650 deaths in Iran and in Israel.
On the Israeli side, the confirmed casualties reported are significantly lower, 24 to 25 deaths, including civilians, and hundreds more wounded due to that barrage of missile and drone strikes we discussed.
So a huge disparity in the reported death tolls.
A very stark disparity, yes. And beyond these sobering numbers, the sources powerfully emphasize something else, that fear grips millions as air raid sirens continue to wail day and night. That's happening in both countries.
That constant fear. So these reported figures, even if they're preliminary, subject to change, they reveal this stark difference in the immediate impact. Israel's airstrikes seemingly causing far higher reported deaths and injuries in Iran compared to Iran's missile strikes on Israel. What does this disparity tell us about the different nature of the attacks, air raids versus mass missile strikes, and maybe about the varying vulnerabilities of the defense systems on each side?
I think this disparity really highlights the differing military approaches and, crucially, the defensive capabilities at play. Israel's air raids, described in the sources as deep strikes, are presumably carried out with precision-guided munitions. aimed at specific targets, albeit targets located deep inside Iran, often critical ones.
Right.
This kind of aerial offensive, when it's successful, can be highly lethal, very efficient in its destructive capacity against infrastructure, against personnel within Iran, and that likely contributes to the higher reported casualty count there. It suggests, perhaps, that Iran's defenses against these deep, precise aerial incursions might be less effective. Or maybe that the targets chosen by Israel, despite claims of precision, are inherently more vulnerable or located in more densely populated areas, leading to more civilian collateral damage. That's also a possibility.
Yeah, the other side.
Conversely, Iran's mass missile and drone strikes, while definitely volumetric and clearly aimed at population centers to maximize impact and psychological pressure, they were largely met by Israel's layered air defense systems. Primarily Iron Dome, but likely others too.
So the defenses worked, mostly.
Mostly. While some projectiles tragically got through and caused casualties, the system clearly mitigated what could have been a far, far deadlier outcome for Israel.
Right.
So this suggests that while Iran possesses the capability to project a large volume of fire, potentially overwhelm defenses, its accuracy, or maybe its ability to completely circumvent advanced air defenses like Iron Dome, is perhaps limited compared to Israel's offensive capabilities for those deep, targeted strikes.
But the fear is real on both sides.
Absolutely. The human cost remains immense on both sides, regardless of the numbers, and that pervasive fear experienced by millions, that's a shared, unifying reality. This constant state of alert, it profoundly impacts daily life. Interrupted sleep, the psychological burden of just never knowing when the next siren will wail.
Yeah.
It's exhausting, terrifying.
Amidst all this destruction, this pervasive fear, there were, as there usually are, urgent attempts at diplomacy. But it sounds like those efforts have completely stalled, leaving the world kind of holding its breath.
That's right.
Can you walk us through the international efforts? Who tried to step in? And crucially, why did those efforts collapse?
Well, the sheer urgency of the situation, the potential for this to spiral completely out of control, it prompted immediate and pretty significant diplomatic moves from major European nations.
Like what?
The UK, France, and Germany. They acted very quickly, dispatching high-level envoys to both Tehran and Tel Aviv.
Okay, the E3.
Exactly. And the very fact that these prominent European powers felt compelled to intervene so immediately, so directly, that tells you a lot about the perceived global threat this escalating conflict poses. They saw the danger.
Where did they try to hold talks?
Discussions were urgently convened in Geneva, a traditional hub for critical diplomatic efforts like this.
But they failed.
They did. Despite the gravity, despite the high-level involvement, these discussions ultimately collapsed. They failed to achieve any kind of breakthrough.
Why? What was the sticking point?
The primary reason cited in the reports for their failure was Iran's stance. Their foreign minister, Abbas Araki, reportedly firmly stated they would not negotiate until Israel ends its airstrikes.
So, a precondition. Stop the bombing, then we talk.
Exactly. A non-negotiable precondition, apparently, from the Iranian side.
Okay, so that was Iran's position. Stop the strikes first. How did Israel respond to that demand? Were they willing to pause their operations, even just briefly, for the sake of getting these crucial talks going?
No. Not according to the sources we looked at. Not at all. Israel, for its part, remains unmoved. That's the phrase used.
Unmoved.
Yeah. Their government signaled very clearly its determination to dismantle Iran's military and nuclear infrastructure before any ceasefire is considered.
Wow. So dismantle first, then maybe talk ceasefire.
That seems to be the stance. So you have this profound and deeply concerning deadlock. Both sides have staked out these absolutely uncompromising positions.
Lines in the sand.
Totally. And so the world watches, anxious, apprehensive, as this dangerous stalemate just continues, maybe even deepens.
Okay, let's connect this to the bigger picture then. How does this kind of rigid adherence to preconditions, how does that impact any future peace efforts? Because it sounds like both sides have drawn these absolute red lines, making any kind of de-escalation almost impossible without one side making a huge, maybe even humiliating climb down. This isn't just about tactics, right? It feels like fundamental strategic objectives are just clashing head on here.
That's precisely the core of the problem. This rigid adherence to preconditions, it creates an almost insurmountable barrier to de-escalation, certainly in the immediate future.
Why insurmountable?
Because each side views its demands not just as, negotiating points. They see them as absolutely fundamental to their national security, their core strategic objectives.
Okay.
Iran's insistence on ending the airstrikes before talks, That reflects its need to protect its national sovereignty, its key military assets, and frankly, its national pride from what it sees as an unprovoked, illegitimate assault.
And Israel's side.
Israel's determination to dismantle Iran's military and nuclear infrastructure. That underscores its long-held, deeply ingrained belief that Iran poses an existential threat to its very existence. Given Iran's rhetoric, its regional actions over decades.
So neither side feels they can budge.
Exactly. When both parties refuse to even come to the table unless their core demands are met upfront, it just freezes diplomacy in place. It means future peace efforts are really unlikely to gain any meaningful traction until one of two things happens. Either the military situation on the ground dramatically shifts, forcing a change in one side's stance, or maybe, just maybe, a powerful third party can step in and offer a truly compelling incentive, or perhaps a security guarantee that addresses both sides' deepest security concerns simultaneously.
Which seems like a long shot right now.
It does. And this stalemate, it doesn't just prolong the immediate conflict and increase the human suffering, it also significantly heightens the risk of this spilling over into the broader region, making any path to a resolution incredibly difficult and fraught with danger.
And speaking of regional spillover, external actors, let's turn to the global players, particularly the United States. President Trump's administration has obviously been watching these dramatic developments very closely. What's been their approach so far? What concrete steps have they actually taken in response to this escalation?
Right. The U.S. under President Trump has adopted what the sources describe as a nuanced stance. It's characterized by strategic caution and preparation.
Caution and preparation?
Yeah.
Meaning?
Well, crucially, they have explicitly held back from direct military involvement in the immediate fighting so far.
Okay, so no direct intervention yet.
Not yet. But, and this is important, this restraint doesn't mean inaction or disinterest. Washington has taken very concrete steps designed to signal its readiness and its deep concern.
Like what?
Primarily, moving aircraft carriers and strike groups into the region.
Okay, that's a big move.
It is. This isn't just a casual deployment. It's a very clear, very strong signal of readiness. It's classic power projection, designed mainly to deter further escalation and also, critically, to protect long-standing American interests and allies in this extremely volatile region.
So it's a calculated approach then. Pressure, preparation, but not direct engagement, at least for now.
That sums it up well, yes.
Now, Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, he issued a pretty stark warning to the U.S. about any potential intervention, didn't he? Saying it would bring irreparable damage.
He did. A very direct warning.
So, beyond just being a general signal of readiness, what does the movement of those massive naval assets, the carriers, the strike groups, what does that really signify to Iran, to Israel, to the rest of the world? And maybe more critically, what are those specific American interests or allies that, if they were hit directly, could potentially change Washington's careful, measured stance? What could push them from observation into direct action? This is where it gets really interesting, right? The global power dynamics, the potential red lines.
Yeah, absolutely. The deployment of carriers and strike groups, it's a multifaceted signal. It's powerful. Firstly, it's a highly visible, undeniable deterrent. It serves as a constant reminder of overwhelming American military capabilities should the conflict escalate beyond what Washington deems acceptable bounds.
Okay, deterrent first.
Second, and very practically, it pre-positions assets for all sorts of contingencies. Whether that's protecting critical shipping lanes, think the Strait of Hormuz.
Vital for oil.
Absolutely vital. Or conducting enhanced surveillance, intelligence gathering, or in a worst-case scenario, just being ready for rapid, direct intervention if needed.
So readiness is key.
It signifies that while the U.S. isn't currently engaged militarily, it possesses the immediate capacity to respond rapidly, decisively, if its red lines are crossed.
And what are those red lines? What are those American interests or allies? The sources don't spell it out, I guess.
No, the sources we had didn't explicitly list them, but historically, contextually, they generally encompass a pretty broad spectrum. It would almost certainly include direct attacks on U.S. personnel or U.S. military bases in the region, you know, those in Iraq, Syria, elsewhere.
Okay, direct attacks on U.S. assets.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or a substantial disruption of global oil supplies that severely impacts the world economy. That's always a major concern.
Allies.
Furthermore, direct attacks on key American allies, think Saudi Arabia, the UAE, other Gulf states allies, crucial to American strategic interests in the region. That would almost certainly trigger a serious reevaluation of Washington's current cautious stance.
Makes sense.
Khamenei's warning just underscores that both sides, Iran and the U.S., are acutely aware of the immense gravity, the potentially catastrophic consequences if the U.S. were to directly enter this conflict.
Yeah, the stakes couldn't be higher there. And while we're talking about the evolving nature of modern warfare, we absolutely have to talk about another front, a rapidly emerging, increasingly dangerous one. The cyber front.
Oh, definitely.
This conflict isn't just happening with missiles and airstrikes on the ground, is it?
Not at all.
What are the American cybersecurity agencies warning about? And what are the potential, very real-world consequences of this digital dimension of the war?
Okay, yeah. Let's unpack this new frontier because, as you said, it's emerging and it affects potentially everyone, not just those in the immediate physical region. American cybersecurity agencies have issued explicit, very urgent warnings about a digital front emerging in this conflict.
What's the specific threat?
The specific threat they're highlighting is that Iranian state-linked hackers groups associated with the Iranian government may soon, or perhaps already are, targeting U.S. businesses, critical infrastructure, and even public utilities.
Utilities. Like power grids.
Exactly. Power grids, water systems, financial networks. And this would be in a form of cyber retaliation for events on the ground.
Okay, that sounds deeply concerning. What are the potential consequences they're warning about?
They're severe and they're far-reaching. We're talking about fears of blackouts, massive data breaches, and widespread digital chaos.
Blackouts, data breaches, digital chaos. I mean, it sounds like something straight out of a techno-thriller movie script.
It does, but the threat is very real, and the potential is there.
So how does this cyber dimension transform the conflict into what the sources are calling a true 21st century war, both online and offline?
Well, it absolutely transforms the nature of conflict. It makes it truly a 21st century war, because in this new paradigm, the battle lines aren't just confined to geographical borders anymore or to traditional military engagements. This critical infrastructure, the things we rely on every single day, are power grids, financial systems, transportation networks, water treatment plants. They're now digitally interconnected. And because of that, they are inherently vulnerable to attack.
From anywhere in the world.
From anywhere. This provides an incredibly potent, non-kinetic, meaning no bombs or missiles way for nations to inflict significant damage and disruption on an adversary, or even on third parties, without firing a single physical shot.
It's asymmetric warfare.
Exactly. It's a classic asymmetric model where a relatively small team of highly skilled hackers can potentially cause widespread societal disruption, huge economic damage.
So why should listeners, especially maybe those of us far removed from the physical fighting in the Middle East, why should we care so deeply about this cyber threat? It sounds like it has the potential to directly affect daily life. Globally.
It absolutely does. For listeners far from the physical conflict zone, this cyber threat is profoundly relevant because it could directly impact your daily life, your economic stability.
How so?
Well, imagine a successful cyber attack on critical utilities in your city or on the banking system you use. It could cause widespread power outages, disrupt essential public services like transportation or emergency response systems, cripple financial transactions, stop you accessing your money.
Okay, that's serious.
Or think about massive privacy violations through data breaches affecting millions of people's personal information. This means the conflict, even if it feels physically contained to the Middle East, could have tangible, highly disruptive effects on economies and societies worldwide.
So we're all potentially vulnerable.
In a way, yes. It makes everyone a potential, albeit maybe unwitting, participant or victim in this digital dimension of the war. It's just a stark reminder of how interconnected our modern world truly is and how vulnerabilities in one part of the globe can create ripple effects everywhere.
And that interconnectedness, it extends beyond just the digital realm too, doesn't it? This conflict is already sending significant ripples throughout the immediate region and inevitably across the global economy. What have we already seen in terms of that regional fallout? Things like evacuations, travel disruptions.
The immediate regional impact has been quite considerable.
Yeah.
And it signals widespread, deep concern among many nations. Several countries, the reports mentioned, the UAE, the UK, Australia, New Zealand, Switzerland, among others, have already taken the drastic step of evacuating their citizens from Israel and Iran.
Wow. That's a huge indicator.
It tells you volumes about the perception of heightened risk, of escalating instability in the region. It suggests these nations anticipate further escalation, maybe unpredictable escalation, and they want their nationals out safely before things potentially deteriorate even further.
And travel.
Yes, the practical consequences are being felt daily by potentially millions of people. Flight paths across the Middle East are being rerouted. Airlines are actively avoiding the growing combat zones.
That must cause chaos for travel and shipping.
Absolutely. It impacts international travel significantly, adds layers of complexity, cost, time, affects logistics, commerce. It makes the region feel increasingly isolated, risky.
And beyond that immediate regional chaos, there's the inevitable economic fallout, particularly in those highly sensitive global markets. What's the mood there? What kind of price shocks are people anticipating, especially in critical sectors like energy?
Yeah, the global economic reaction is one of palpable nervousness, definitely bracing for impact. International markets, and especially, as you say, the oil market, are demonstrably on edge. They're bracing for possible price shocks depending on how this war escalates.
Right. And this really raises that important question again about the interconnectedness of global events, doesn't it? Even for those of us far removed from the actual fighting.
It does.
Why are oil markets always so particularly sensitive to Middle East conflict? And how could escalation there directly impact global energy prices, the broader economy, even for listeners who aren't directly involved?
Well, the Middle East is, quite simply, pivotal for global energy supply. It just is. Any significant disruption to oil production in the region or refining capacity or, crucially, transport routes.
Like Hormuz again.
Exactly, like the Strait of Hormuz. It's this critical maritime choke point. A massive portion of the world's oil supply goes through there. Any disruption, or even just the threat of disruption, can immediately trigger severe supply concerns globally.
And fear drives prices.
Precisely. Even the threat can drive up speculative prices. So, escalation in a conflict involving major oil producers like Iran and countries neighboring Israel that are vital transit nations, it directly threatens that stability.
And higher oil prices mean?
Higher oil prices translate directly into higher costs for basically everything. Transportation, shipping, manufacturing, the food on your table, consumer goods, everything gets more expensive.
Inflation.
Yeah, it can lead to widespread inflation, reduce consumer spending power because people have less money left after filling their tanks or paying heating bills, and potentially it can slow down global economic growth overall.
So even if you're thousands of miles away?
Even if you're thousands of miles away, the price you pay at the gas pump, the price of your groceries, the cost of almost any consumer goods, it could be directly impacted by these events unfolding in the Middle East. It just underscores those deep, unavoidable global economic links to this conflict.
So after these dramatic, really transformative 10 days, where does this leave us? I mean, this period seems to have fundamentally redefined the Israel-Iran conflict. It shifted it from that proxy and shadow war footing into a direct, volatile, dangerously unpredictable confrontation. And it clearly has these far-reaching global implications we've been talking about. What are the key indicators for the future? What should we all be watching incredibly closely now?
Well, the key indicators right now point towards a deeply entrenched stalemate, at least for the foreseeable future.
Well, stalemate. Why?
Because, as we discussed, Israel has clearly signaled its readiness for a long conflict. That indicates its strategic objectives go way beyond just a quick punitive strike. It seems to include a sustained effort to dismantle what it perceives as Iran's aggressive military capabilities and its nuclear infrastructure.
Okay, so Israel's digging in for the long haul, potentially.
That's the signal, yes. And conversely, Iran's demands remain equally firm, an end to strikes before any talks begin. That reflects its determination to defend its sovereignty, its assets, its pride.
So no give on either side.
Right. So to synthesize it, diplomacy, frozen solid, tensions, sky high, maybe still rising. And those cyber threats we talked about, they're increasingly on the rise, adding this whole new, pervasive, unpredictable dimension to the conflict.
And beneath all of that, the geopolitics, the military action, the complex strategic calculations, there's still that deeply human reality, isn't there?
Always.
That millions from Tel Aviv to Tehran live in fear of the next missile, the next airstrike, the next war headline. This isn't some abstract concept for them. It's a terrifying, ever-present daily reality for so many people caught in the middle.
It truly is.
And as we conclude this deep dive, it really leaves us with a profoundly thought-provoking question, I think. How might this period, this sustained direct engagement between two major regional powers, how might it fundamentally redefine the future of the Middle East? Its internal dynamics, its relationship with the rest of the world. And maybe even more personally, what does it truly mean for societies, for people, to live in fear of the next war headline. How might that pervasive anxiety, that uncertainty, shape the societal landscape, the collective psyche, in the long run?
That's a huge and incredibly pressing question. And you're right, it's likely to define the region for years, maybe decades to come. A sustained, direct conflict like this, it fundamentally reshapes regional alliances. It could force countries that have long tried to maintain some kind of neutrality to choose sides more explicitly. That could lead to entirely new geopolitical configurations we haven't seen before.
And economically.
Economically, it can trigger long-term instability, drive away essential foreign investment, cripple crucial sectors like tourism, force a complete reevaluation of global supply chains that have historically relied, to some extent, on the region's stability.
And for the people living through it.
For the people living under this constant existential threat, the psychological toll is just immense. It can lead to widespread societal trauma, deep-seated distrust between communities, between nations, and a profound reordering of national priorities, shifting away from things like development, education, healthcare, towards an overwhelming focus on security, on survival.
A siege mentality.
Exactly. This kind of prolonged fear, it doesn't just create immediate suffering. It can also breed extremism, make future peace even more elusive because positions harden, distrust deepens, and ultimately it risks creating the self-perpetuating cycle of violence that reshapes national identities, shapes external relations for generations. It changes fundamentally what it means to live in that region.
A truly sobering thought to end on. Look, staying informed on such complex, fast-moving global events, it isn't just about catching the immediate headlines. It's really about trying to grasp the underlying forces, the long-term implications that are fundamentally shaping our world.
Yeah.
Our aim with this deep dive, as always, was to cut through that incredible amount of noise out there and deliver you the core insights, the critical context of what has been a truly unprecedented and, frankly, dangerous 10 days in the Israel-Iran conflict.
And we genuinely hope you continue your own curiosity, your own critical thinking about these world events. Understanding the multifaceted nature of modern conflicts, not just on the ground, but in the diplomatic rooms, the global markets, and increasingly in that digital space, it's just more important now than ever before.
Absolutely. Just a note, this deep dive drew on a wide range of trusted sources for the factual basis of our discussion today. That included AP News, the Times of London, the Financial Times, the NY Post, Reuters, and Al Jazeera. We'll certainly keep watching this story as it continues to unfold.
We will.
Thank you for diving deep with us.
Yeah.
Until next time, stay informed.